Thank you so much, Jeannie. I was in awe because you did actual research. and I'm really honored with that you really, were able to find all these pieces of information and put them together so beautifully. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming. This is just awesome to see all of you here, so many people in this place, which, obviously I have a long history with Keeling Rinpoche, first of all, and with the Sangha, and with all of the activity, and so it's just an incredible honor for me to bring the story, the story of my book and my retreat here. So I think I wrote somewhere it would be like a little homecoming for me to bring this talk here to you all, to the Sangha, and in this place. Yeah, and I did actually even live here for a while in the other house for a few years too. So I feel like I'm a little bit of me is from here. So I want to tell you what my plan is for us for the next hour or so. First of all, I'm going to read a very short, about one page, which is the very first page of my book. It's in the introduction. I'm going to read that because it describes my retreat more succinctly, and as you will see, I'm a better writer than I am talker, because when I talk, I'm all over the place, and with a lot of ums and ahs, or that sort of thing. So anyway, so I'll be doing more reading than just talking, which will be much more enjoyable for you, I think, and not to mention for myself. But anyway. Anyway, so I'll start with this little introduction about the retreat, and then I wrote a little speech just for here. This is you get a special deal because of being my Sangha. And so there was a particular thing I wanted to talk about here in this context, and so I wrote a speech about that. And then after that, then I'll read some passages from the book, and then we'll do a Q&A session. Okay, so Oh, this is going to be interesting. Yes, I think it does work with all this paraphernalia. I feel like I'm missing something. No. Karen says no, it's good. Everything's good. Okay. All right, so 3 years, 3 months, 3 days. A long time to go away from friends and family, away from society altogether, to dive into the realm of deep psyche and further into soul and spirit. In our Western tradition, but only rarely these days, religious hermits, monks and nuns in cloisters, those who take vows of silence or stay in the mountains, do so in order to become quiet enough to contact the nether reaches of what it means to be human. Contact then followed by transformation, or that is the hope. Christians who wish to open to God hope to become more like Jesus. Shamans who wish to connect with spirit hope to become more effective healers or visionaries. Buddhists who wish to open to their intrinsic nature hope to become enlightened. Beautiful wishes to benefit others. I would sometimes explain to the curious, this 3-year retreat is a traditional form in Tibetan Buddhism. There is a guide, a place, a small community, a curriculum, and boundaries. The purpose is to have a chance to practice the array of Buddhist meditations and liturgies in a concentrated way in order to give this inner medicine a chance to do its work on oneself. Without undisturbed retreat, especially in today's world of serial distraction, most of us can't fully delve into the path, much less realize the goal. My own retreat leaned slightly unorthodox. It had an eccentric orbit, touching down for months at a time in one place or another. 9 stays at 5 different places. All were in the Pacific Northwest, and most were not at retreat centers, instead at the homes of kind friends or family with unoccupied houses, where I could stay for an extended time and do solo retreat. This style of roving retreat, while not unheard of in Tibet, is pretty unusual in the West. Most Western retreatants go into long retreat with a group in a retreat setting and stay put for the prescribed time. They receive guidance from teachers who enter into their space, and they see or speak to no one outside their small community, while all their needs are arranged for them by a liaison. But for me, while I had many of the requisite elements for retreat, I was lacking a ready retreat center or the funds to pay my way into one. My customary response to any perceived obstacle, though, would be to say, well, there must be a creative solution, so how can I accomplish X, Y, or Z? In this case, the solution was in finding free or inexpensive places to stay, places that would be conducive to, even inspiring for, spiritual journeying. And further, for the lack of retreat community, I would substitute with limited social contact. So, retreat housing, check. Authentic Lama as guide, check. Years of experience in Tibetan Buddhism, check. Dharma meditation and practice in back pocket, check. Supportive Sangha and friends, check. Permission of family, check. As obstacles melted away, as intention advanced to forward movement, it became clear that it would happen. A date, auspicious for beginning a spiritual endeavor according to the Tibetan calendar, was chosen, and I felt increasing certainty and joy with each passing day toward its approach, ready for launch. Okay, so that hopefully answers some questions about what were some of the outer perimeters or outer description of what the retreat was about. And also, I don't think I have anything that I'm going to read to you, but I mentioned that about this one aspect of the retreat that was unusual because I was on my own. But especially for a first 3-year retreat, it's really important for the individual not to be totally in isolation the whole time, especially in the beginning for the first couple of years. And so that was why it was really important for me in the beginning to have some social contact with, not just anybody, but certain specific people or members of my family. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because sometimes people have wondered about that, and I do talk about it. I do talk about that quite a bit in the book, but I'm not going to read about it tonight. I don't think it's in there anyway. So now I would like to read you this other thing, this little speech that I wrote for tonight. Yeah. My cord is stuck. Yeah, obviously I'm moving around too much. Thank you. This is my dresser. He told me when we started I should refer to him as Mr. Bruce. So he's very kindly set up for this. Okay. So I have a little piece of writing that I wrote for this evening because of being here in Pema Kilaya's temple with my Sangha, addressing something a little special for you. All right, here it is. Why did I feel compelled to write this book? Why is there even a question? This question is embedded in Tibetan Buddhist tradition, where it's thought that it's better not to convey very much about one's retreat, the practices done, or the experiences. Just as, in the same way, the traditional instructions advise us not to share much about our personal practice inside or outside of retreat. And yet, she went ahead. So I've written 4 main points to answer this question. The first is, I am a writer. This is by training and profession. But also, writing has always been for me, at times, a form of art. On retreat, I had done quite a lot of journal writing. At one point, toward the end of retreat, Keelung Rinpoche advised me to go back and review the whole of the retreat experience and to rejoice. So, of course, I picked up all my journals and reread them start to finish. Aside from the impact of re-experiencing the retreat, I was struck with the quality of some of the writing and thinking that people would like to read some of this. And thinking that, I wondered if I could craft it into a book. But while questioning the wisdom of sharing retreat details, I was also experiencing an artist's urge to share my art, which happens to be writing. Ultimately, I decided to heed that call while protecting most of the inner experiences and practices of the retreat by not including them in the book. Secondly, coming out of retreat, I had a strong wish that my retreat should benefit others. That's our vow, right? So, sharing the story of the retreat became one of those avenues as a form of inspiration and giving Buddhists as well as non-Buddhists a view into this relatively rare life experience. Life experiment of spending significant solitary time in spiritual pursuit. There are no other books that I know of like this, written by the retreatant himself or herself. Themself is what I wrote here. Okay. Right, we want to be correct in all things, right? A book that honestly conveys the substantial difficulties and the rewards, in effect, the entire process. There are so many teaching books on Tibetan Buddhism, and Small Boat, Vast Ocean does include some of that, but my book is mostly experiential, taking the reader right along on this deep dive into the actual spiritual work. As it turns out, the book is one I would have liked to have read myself before or after retreat. There's another layer here too, a third point. Writing as a Westerner and as a woman, some reflections also popped up about the development of Buddhism in the West and how this is going from a woman's perspective and how women might uniquely approach the path. So beyond my personal retreat experience, I felt I had something to say, especially as one with a fair amount of experience in Tibetan Buddhism and who had spent so much time in Tibetan Buddhist communities in Asia, while working closely with, almost understudying, a Tibetan Lama. Finally, the retreat itself felt like a true group effort. Pema Kilaya Sangha helped to support the retreat financially, and importantly, many Sangha members stepped in, getting personally involved in so many ways it's almost dizzying. from supplying one of the retreat locations to grocery shopping to driving me from one location to the next, and much, much more. Not only Sangha, also friends and family. So I wrote the book also as a thank you gift, so that anyone could vicariously, as an armchair inner traveler, experience a little of what they had been supporting, to taste what it would be like to make the journey of a 3-year retreat. All of these motivations merge together into a visceral, single-pointed urge and creative process. After completing my second retreat in 2016, and once I had made the decision to go ahead, I rode a bliss-filled wave of writing and crafting the book all the way to publication this last March. There were approximately 2 long periods when I had to set the project aside, including the year my mother died. And I was also teaching Buddhism throughout. But it was this project that has been my raison d'être. In fact, I realized a year ago that if there was something I must do before I died, this book was it. And in this way, the thread of the 3-year retreat has continued reverberating with me, or through me, ever since. That's my little message, because I'm sure that maybe, some people in the Sangha might have wondered, why did she write, yeah, isn't that supposed to be protected? Yeah, so now you know. She went ahead. Yeah. Thank you. It's been good also to have had Keelan Rinpoche's blessing for the book, too. And so that's one of the reasons I'm happy to be here, because he already was happy with the result of the book, and not only that, he, gave permission for me to give this talk. So that was great. So now let's see, how are we doing? Yes, we're doing well. And I trust everyone in the back can hear me. Wonderful, yeah. Hopefully you would have let us know beforehand, before this point, if you couldn't hear or couldn't understand. Okay, so I've got a few little places to read, and it'll be going, from the beginning of the retreat all through, to the end. So one of the things I need to tell you as I'm reading this is that I have some different kinds of writing in the book. So there are passages, most of the passages in the book are from my journal writing. And then there are other passages in the book which are in italics. And those ones were parts that I wrote while I was crafting the book. So they were written after the retreat was over. And I didn't know when I first conceived of the book, I didn't know it would need that. But as I was starting to craft it, I went, oh, this needs an explanation, or I want to insert something. And so I call those the present voice parts. And so when just to myself kind of, and so I'll let you know if I'm reading a present voice section or a journal section. And also there's a glossary in the back, and there's an introduction and a prologue, and I'm going to start by reading the very first part of chapter 1, where the retreat actually starts. And also at the beginning of every chapter is a little quotation. I quote from somebody, some wise person or a piece of poetry or something. So, okay, so this is chapter 1. It's where I'm headed on my way to Bainbridge Island, which was the first place that I went to. And the quotation is from the very famous and wonderful Lama named Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche. So here's what he wrote. Ideally, what are you retreating from? You are supposed to be retreating from the past and future. That is the ultimate boundary of your retreat. Not your door, not your geographical area. Ideally, you are supposed to be in the hut, and this hut is the present moment. But of course, this is not that easy, especially for those who are not used to it. So now, October 17th, 2011, setting off. This is a present voice description of, so it's, now you know what that means. Okay. Everything jammed into my friend Jeannie's car. Suitcase, boxes of sacred books and altar items, sitting cushions, whatever I thought I'd need for 3 years of retreat. Rinpoche and I squeezed in, and with Jeannie at the wheel, we drove off downhill to the Whidbey Island ferry, crossing over the Salish Sea for a quick 20 minutes trip to the mainland. There would be a second ferry crossing that day to Bainbridge Island, and then after tucking me into retreat, Jeannie and Rinpoche would retrace the path back to Whidbey. Calm and collected, we went upstairs to the ferry's galley for tea. Returning to the car, Jeannie suddenly realized that her keys, missing from her purse, had been left in the ignition, safely locked inside. A ferry worker was called over. No luck opening the door with a Slim Jim. The lines of cars disgorged onto the Mukilteo side while the three of us helplessly looked on. Jeannie was beside herself, apologizing and inwardly steaming. I could tell she was steaming, but I quietly chuckled at the unexpected and surreal scene of us standing on the car deck, watching as the ferry made its return trip to the island. I was supposed to be leaving Whidbey, not approaching it. But there was a karmic message in there for me, I thought. I would return one day, welcomed by the community of Buddhists there, recalling the Tibetan belief that if you accidentally leave something behind when you depart a place, it is an auspicious sign that you'd be returning in the future, reunited with friends or family. So I wasn't disturbed by this unexpected ruffle in the plans, but took it in stride. No blame. The ferry people had called in a locksmith from Mukilteo who met us on our return trip, unlocked the car in minutes, and we were off down the freeway through Seattle onto our now fourth ferry crossing of the day. Then we drove up Bainbridge Island to my former mother-in-law's house, where the three of us unloaded my things into this large and sprawling empty house and readied me for embarkation on a voyage of major import. Okay, now I'm going to switch the same day, October 17th, to journal writing. So this was my first real entry. Exhausted after the long period of preparations, so many aspects to write about, now tucked into bed as I'm tucked into retreat. My sister-in-law Barbara had met us at the house. Together we made the altar and sitting area beautiful. A special retreat sign in Tibetan script was installed on the outside of the house, facing east. Then Jeannie and Barbara left us, and Rinpoche made prayers to seal me in, invoking all the energies and entities possible to keep obstacles out and to accomplish all the aspirations of the retreat. In serious concentration, we prayed that the endeavor would benefit all beings and all would be auspicious all the way to the end. I was aware of the loving kindness between us and the excitement and joy begun yesterday that had spilled over to that moment. It had been late last night on Whidbey that he had given me my first retreat instructions, saying these first 2 weeks I am to rest. So this is a little holiday with practice. Even still, I need to make some practical preparations. Rinpoche had checked the Tibetan calendar and identified today as auspicious for beginning retreat because the combined elements of earth and water are harmonious for increase and development. Other signs also good, he said. Because of how busy things have been, I've barely let myself perceive it, like a dream. But this is big. So much happiness at being here, but also grief at leaving. Many friends, Dharma students, and family felt some grief over this. I had said to them, I will be in close contact through prayer. Tonight, after everyone left and I was putting things away, I was aware that the shrine room is infused with power after Rinpoche's blessing. So I sat down for some meditation, a short session because exhausted. But now, that's all for one night. Looking forward to tomorrow and all to come. So that was my very first day. Let's see. Yeah. So I have to drink some water. Okay, so on Bainbridge Island, all of these places that I was able to stay, all 5 places were so beautiful. Most of them had big views. Some of them, maybe all of them, of the water, of some kind of water, the ocean or the salt water of some kind. The 3 of them were in the San Juan Islands. 1 of them was on Willapa Bay, or an estuary that feeds into Willapa Bay, actually. And then, actually, I said 3 of them were in the San Juans. That's not true. 2 in the San Juans, and 1 was Bainbridge. So anyway, 3 islands. And then there was a retreat center high up in the Siskiyou Mountains on 300 acres. That place did not have like a sky view right where my cabin was, but it was very quiet, very special, very different from here. Very dry land. Lots of madronas. The ground was just covered with, old madrona leaves that don't really decompose, but you walk on them and it's crunch, crunch, crunch everywhere. But slippery, those slippery madrona leaves everywhere. It was really beautiful. Also, anyway, so the place on Bainbridge, I could walk 1 block to the beach, right to the water, and there really weren't that many people around there. So I wrote a poem. This was after 1.5 months into my retreat, and it's just a poem that I wrote about the beach. It's called Sand Manuscript. The sea wrote on the beach again. Obscure message for someone. Me? Most days it leaves long, meandering, empty lines of sand, edged by borders of pebbles, hard for the foot to navigate. Hard-packed trail of sand invites paw prints, boot prints. Most days it goes like this, from down to up. Margin of water continuously lapping, scouring, scribbling. Border of pebbles, sketchy line of sand, border of pebbles, broad corridor of sand, margin of salt-saturated logs to signal, ends here, look below. But today, there were messages left by the sea. The tide had been busy carving circles and shapes between the lines, leaving distinct O's and diagrams, piles of pebbles in cryptic script upon sandy manuscript. This was the beach for me, but a message in mysterious language, alphabet even. Cyrillic and Tibetan I have known, but this script was written by dakinis, or those who live in the angel realm, or of fairies. Braille for the feet walking the beach, but mine beyond blind. Perhaps by enlightenment one would come to know if the tide hadn't too early erased the secret. Sorry? Was that somebody? Oh. Okay. So here is a little part that I wrote in William. It's in the Siskiyous. It's in this kind of. It's not really a town. It's a corner called Williams, and I wrote this 1 year into retreat. 2 days, I was sitting in some high woods on a fallen madrona, a still and deep place. Through the trees, 2 weasel-like creatures, martens, appeared. They were running around, checking all their little places. After a while, I could see only one. He was coming in my direction, so I started to make some quiet noises so he wouldn't get too frightened of me at the last moment. And I didn't want him too close either. Quite large animals, beautiful, like sea otters of the land, alert, moving fluidly with infinitely flexible spines. I've seen deer a few times. I recently scared the bejesus out of 3 who were feeding right outside the back kitchen door when I swiftly emerged on my way to the outhouse. Their sudden getaway scared me too. I had to stand there for a moment and then let out a large whoosh of a sigh. I counted 25 vultures in the sky the other day. Carrie said one time she counted 60. Lots of jays here too. Recently, while meditating in my chair on the porch, a small squirrel came running into view, checking things out. He suddenly leaped through the blue fence surrounding the carp pond, ran to the pool's edge, flipped himself upside down, apparently going for a drink, while still hanging on with his toenails. After a moment, he ran off. Last night, I heard an otherworldly, weird sound, high-pitched. I could only think of a cougar, or someone else being made into cougar's dinner. Somewhat chilling, as it was in the direction of the patch of ground where I pee at night. Lately, while in the woods, or even in my room, I've had these experiences of deep stillness that go on and on. I realize how quiet it is, and then, half expecting something to interrupt, it doesn't. Instead, the quiet continues, lengthens, and I go deeper, to a deeper place inside. Then I become aware again of the quiet, and it continues, and I go deeper again, relaxing to a new level of inner quiet and rapport with this exterior quiet. It's a kind of listening and hearing the quiet. It's not totally silent because it's the woods, but so quiet it's profound. It's almost waiting for something, like the empty matrix, shunyata emptiness, pregnant with possibility, to open up in front of me. At any moment, a tree branch could fall, a corvid could caw, an iridescent beetle could fascinate by, a helicopter could fly overhead. But none of these happen, and that continues to unknot my mind while I sink more and more deeply into a relaxed state, releasing the outer world too. I think earlier I may not have been ready, but regardless, I'm here and ready now. So I think we're still doing good. Okay. So I'm going to read, I'm going to read, this is a consultation with Rinpoche that I wrote something about, and this is in December of 2013, so this is just over 2 years into retreat. So we're jumping ahead year by year. Okay, December 7th. But first, you can think about that while I drink some water. Normally I wouldn't do a consultation thing for a book reading, but this is a special deal for you guys. We reviewed experiences of the last 2 months related to my practice, about details of the subtle body system, especially in light of recent experiences, and we looked at what's next. Rinpoche said much and taught extensively. Here are a few shareable notes. I told him that most of my practice sessions have these qualities: bliss, movement, samadhi, pleasure, engagement, active, often beautiful. He said, quote, "These are blessing support for practice and experience. You don't necessarily need to hold on to or know words for it. Just do the practice with non-conceptuality. They are a subtle key that all things, anything can happen. Don't be too eager to hold on. If you connect with it, that's beautiful, but you don't have to get lost or leave the base of practice environment. Discovering that in that way is the most powerful. Bliss, clarity, non-conceptual mind, these are really big for serious practitioners, not to be attached. When it happens, it happens." Unquote. Then I said that on or off the cushion, I feel at ease, no anxiety or lung problems, enjoying solitude at all times of day, and happy. He said, quote, "This is amazing. That is the retreat, the quality. Not only having experiences like visions, etc. This is more of the essential human nature of ease in the mind, of living qualities. That is the result." Unquote. When I shared about the sense of an expanded love, he said, quote, "Really bodhicitta quality of love. No object, objectless." Unquote. Okay, then I'm going to read another poem. This is also jumping ahead about a year. So this is really, I've done 3 years of retreat. After this point, I still did another 4 months of retreat. Yeah, because it was 3.5 years altogether that I completed. So this poem, at this point in the retreat, I was staying at my folks' place on San Juan Island, right on the beach. Every winter they had gone away to Southern California for the winter, and so I was basically house sitting, and it was a very, very beautiful place. So the bedroom where I was sleeping and waking up in the morning and everything, looking right out at Cattle Pass. I don't know if you all know where this is, but anyway, looking right out at Cattle Pass, and there's a little tiny barren island right out in front, in the middle of the pass, and then right beyond that is Lopez Island, and then over there is, you can see over there is Whidbey Island. So I was looking at Whidbey Island a lot of the time that I was there. But anyway, so then here's my poem. Luminous Winter Expanse. The night in The night in deep winter meditation, even the seals silent, a slow, steady respiration of the sea's breath, a mammoth being heaving in bottomless slumber, and the wind at rest. I switch off the light to signal my own descent. Soft luminosity glows through the window, full moon projecting its light into fog. Each particle of space amplified, magnified. What before was invisible, now defined in its full dimensionality by teeniest water drops of gentle lunar light. The sole bare beachside tree cloaked with white glow, no Goose Island, no Lopez, no horizon, all disappeared, replaced, erased into light for one night. So that is really the end of my reading. And before I completely stop, I'm going to read the aspiration that I have at the end of the book. An aspiration that I wrote on retreat, and that we can all share in this aspiration. My wish for all of us is that our imaginations of what is possible expand in such a clear picture with such confidence that the pathways open up and we're drawn in without effort, like water mixing with water. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much. So we can do a little Q&A session.
I think we have to use a mic since this is being recorded.
Oh, okay.
Just repeat the question.
I could, well, sometimes the questions are complex and we could be possibly difficult, but sure.
No, the questions would be not on the recording if we use a mic.
Yeah, so. Bruce is so good with all of this sound tech.
Pass it around or maybe come out.
So maybe nobody has a question. Somebody has a question.
Fear. Did you have moments of fear, being alone, and also deep in the practice, being alone, like fear of the unknown coming from the practice, and fear from the elements and the environment and the animals, and fear from humans, and how did you approach fears?
That is such a great question, Shanti. Thank you. Nobody's really asked me that question before, and it's a big part of the journey, actually, is fear. And I did have fear. I had big fear, actually, of bears. I saw at one point when I was in the Siskiyou Mountains, I had 8 bear sightings in a 3-week period, and also in that 3-week period, I also saw a cougar that was right next to my cabin. And my cabin was, there wasn't any. If I had yelled out or something, there wasn't anybody who would have heard me. And And the 8 bear sightings were sort of fabulous at first, but then they kept coming, and they were like different bears. It was very clear. It wasn't just one bear hanging around. And I had actual fear about that. And I also then, when the bears and when that whole period, it was kept going and going, and I talk. It's in the book. There's quite a bit about this in the book. I didn't really. Of course, I tried bringing the practice to this, but it was very difficult because I kept imagining, how much do I really care or not care about having my life go to being a meal for a wild animal. All this, like my whole life, like the apex or not, whatever, of my life is going to just get by, all those kind of fantasies like that. And so the only thing that really helped was the fact that they kind of went away. And the other thing that helped was I decided to change where I was on retreat. So and then this wonderful other opportunity opened up where I could be on Bainbridge Island in this very safe environment for over a year, for a whole, for quite a long period. So that really helped. But then another thing popped up too, which was, while I was still there in the Siskiyous, there were wildfires that started up in August. This was a couple months later, and that gave me a great deal of anxiety also. But there was a whole other level, kind of in the middle of the retreat. We're kind of at the end of the first half, let's just say at the end of the first half of the retreat, where I had a lot of anxiety coming up. And that was related to problems, lung problems. And, some of you know what that means, and probably some of you don't know what that means. But it's the inner air system in the Tibetan medical system. There's inner air, and if you do too much intensive practice, it can bring on problems, and they can be quite severe problems, and they can contribute to anxiety, and anxiety can contribute to lung problems. It's kind of a cyclical thing. And so Rinpoche helped me with some specific yogic kind of exercises to help quell that. And so the practice helped with that, and these kind of yogic exercises helped with that, but it was kind of a little package deal, that there was a lot of anxiety that had nothing to do with bears. Or cougars, or scorpions. There were scorpions up there too. Wow, that was exciting. Anyway, but otherwise, I didn't. Otherwise, and then I had a run-in with these 2 absolutely gigantic, like Pyrenees what do you call them? Anyway, these huge giant dogs on the beach too. This one time where I really was seriously had to do some serious, stuff to not get attacked by these 2 very big dogs that were very aggressive. I was afraid for a moment there too, but yeah.
So then the other part of my question, like when you get deeper into the meaning of the practice, when you're deeper into the nature of your mind, there's a thing in the paramitas where you have great patience in the process of going into the deeper meaning. I'm just wondering, does fear arise at that point? Is that what you mean by the lung problems? Or
later in my retreat, I didn't have any of that. That was all gone. It was like all of it was gone. It was all gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It was a result of retreat, I think. Yeah. Result of that much practice, that, fruition of retreat. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Biggsy.
Yeah. you.
Thank you, Diane, and all. I was wondering how often Rinpoche came to be with you, and if you knew when he was going to be coming.
Thank you. Yeah. I always knew when he was coming. He and I were in good, contact with each other through email and through telephone sometimes. So and there were a few times where we had meetings on, what do you call that? Not Zoom, but the one that predated Zoom. Skype. Thank you, yeah. And there were also a couple of times when I went to him because, on these trips that I was taking from relocating from one place to another place, if it was convenient, we would work in a little trip to see him too. So yeah, we always knew ahead of time. But I don't know. I'd have to really kind of think about how often those contacts were, but several times a year. Yeah, definitely. I also, a very important part of my retreat was in the first 2 years, I had a confidant who I had a weekly phone call with. And she was on Bainbridge, so every once in a while it was in person, but most of the time it was by phone. And that kind of saved my bacon for the first couple of years. Yeah, it was fantastic to have that. Yeah, and Molly has a question. Hi, Molly.
Hi, Diane. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I have one question, which is more about after your retreat, how that worked, because I know you went back into retreat. So could you speak a little bit about that transition in, out, and then now you're out, but are you in still?
Yeah, well, yeah. And is there a specific aspect of that you want to hear about, or is there just sort of general?
The phenomenon of in and out, coming in and out.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, there was a period of about maybe about 8 months, I think, between the completion of this retreat. This book just talks about the 3-year retreat. And then there was a second retreat, and there were, as I said, about 8 months in between. And so many things happen in that transition time. And it kind of, it was not easy, actually. Yeah, so it's almost like too much to talk about in the time that we have, which is, yeah, to talk about that. But I would say overall it was fine, overall. I had one of the things about coming out of a 3-year retreat is that if you really, a normal 3-year retreat where you don't go anywhere, you're just in one place, it is said to be enormously difficult to come out of retreat and almost physically painful. And I didn't have that. It was a big deal, of course, for me also to come out of retreat. You were there those first moments, Sheila, when Sheila was, I ran into her and her partner Anne on the ferry with Jeannie and Rinpoche. Anyway, on the ferry coming from Orcas Island. Yeah, and it was just sort of quite amazing. And I must have been like, she was probably, you were thinking that I was acting like somebody on acid or something, going, oh my God, oh my God. Yeah. Wow. About everything. But one of the things that Rinpoche has said is quite a few times in different ways over these years about my retreat having, where I was relocating a number of times, quite a number of times, and in those relocation, little periods, I would interact with normal people in the outer world. He said was actually a good thing. He thought it was a good thing. And the reason for that is because it balanced me more, so that it made that transition out of retreat not so painful and not so jarring and so forth. I mean, one of the things about being on 3-year retreat, whether you are, in traditional times in retreat, for the centuries in Tibet, whether you're one of those, are one of those people, or you're a Westerner in our world, in our modern world, who's gone into a cloistered, any kind of 3-year retreat actually, is the Lama who's checking on you, or the attendants who are checking on you, one of the things they're checking on is to find out if you're going crazy or not, because this is in traditional Tibet, so it's not a Westerner thing, it's not a modern world thing, it's a going into retreat thing. And so it's very important to make sure that people are balanced, that they have enough socialization because they're with a group of 8 people in this cloistered situation, or in my case, I had contact with my confidant, or a phone call to my daughter once in a while, or that sort of thing. And at some point in the retreat, I didn't need that anymore. But Rinpoche, he was looking, he was watching me. Is she okay or not? And at one point he said, "You're doing great. You're not going crazy. This is good." And no, I know, I'm not going crazy, but but it takes that outside person, to be checking. And so, yeah, this is a lot of blah, blah, blah in terms of your question, but it was, it got me going on talking about my retreat and what that's like. Yeah. So one of the things that's, with a group like this of practitioners in our tradition, that's always important to say, and I'm sure you've heard Rinpoche say this before, that it's so important that people don't just go off on their own and go, okay, I'm going to do a 3-year retreat, and then just be on their own, in isolation or something like that. It's you need the kind of the program, and you need a lama, you need a qualified lama, etc. So, and
maybe have time for one or so more questions.
Yeah, I think we can have maybe about one more question, and then if there is one. And Erica.
Thank you. Diane, this is so important. I really am so grateful, and so many levels of questions, and I'll try and find one. But I've been reliving my own retreat experiences and listening in a very different way than your other presentations, which I went to several. And I'm really appreciating the difference, and that we have this container, we can speak more openly. One of the deepest retreats I've done is dark retreat. And it's really hitting me hard. There was no support. And in the 3 that I did, it was like 3 completely different worlds of experience. So intense, in absolute utter bliss or terrifying horror. And did that happen to you over the 3 years, those extremities? Or was the length of time and the support system you had create a situation where it wasn't as extreme? These were periods of time you could move in and out of in a different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can talk about that. So there was this previous question about fear and the anxiety that came up as a result of kind of the getting off kilter with the inner air, inner air problem, and that was excruciating. Those times were sometimes excruciating. But the other thing I wanted to say was that in the container of a 3-year retreat, normally in the beginning, there's going to be some big issue that arises, and it's the psyche. So it would not be related to like the inner air, subtle body stuff. And it could trigger, for any particular person, it could trigger different things. It could trigger anxiety, it could trigger anger, it could trigger any of the, the poisons, right? The 5 poisons, or combination of all, or whatever. But there will be some issue. For a lot of people, actually, in the 3-year retreats that they do when they're in a group, it will be interpersonal. And I've heard about this, and those can be absolutely excruciating, also, and with no apparent resolution. And sometimes, for some people, that can go on for the whole 3 years. Difficulties, between people. So when something like that then arises, and you're on your own on retreat, you don't have anybody to blame. You get to look and go, okay, yeah. And I had my issue that came up, and and it's very much in my book. I talk very directly about it, and some of those were very excruciating. And I did have support, fortunately, but I still had to deal with it. And I used many different modalities to deal with it, including very much the practice, my relationship with the deities, Guru Rinpoche, and also, but also I knew some therapy, so I did self-therapy, I did, a whole array of things and then when I got over it, it did resolve. There was absolute resolution, and, just as a coming together of all of these things. And that whole trajectory, in the beginning, like, and then resolution, that whole trajectory took about the first maybe 8 months or something like that, is common. That is common. And and in Tibet. And I didn't know it. I was not expecting it. I didn't know about that. So it's also one, it's like good to know. And anyway, thank you. Yeah, I think we're good. I think we should conclude now. So I just wanted to say at the very end, again, thank you so much. Yeah, you could just put that. Yeah, I think we're good. Thank you. This is my daughter, by the way. My daughter came from Seattle. Yeah. in case people don't know her, Sophia. Anyway, right. So yes, I wanted to thank so much Jeannie and Karen, who left, but the directors, and I wanted to thank Saringma for opening up and being, also a host, and Bruce for helping with things, and Sheila for helping here. So, so many thanks. And I wanted to say, Sheila is helping me with she's selling books, so if anybody wants to buy a copy. And also, the book, if you don't want to do that this evening, the Moonraker in Langley has copies. I don't know how many, they might run out at some point, but they can always order more. And also, Amazon has it, but I like supporting, I like promoting the little bookstores. But anyway, these are options. And and there will be some here in the future, after tonight. And let's see, then also, we don't have a credit card thing set up, but if you want to send me a check, we've got it set up, so actually you can go away with a book tonight and send me a check or send, money through PayPal or Zelle, or whatever you call that. So all that information is with Sheila, and then I'll sign the book for you if you'd like. So that's it. That's all I can think of. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Gathering us as a Sangha here tonight.
Thank you. Yeah.
Lovely.
Thank you so much for coming out.
Yes, and thank everybody, and we'll be here a little longer if anybody still has questions that they'd like to ask Diane, or as she mentioned, buy a book. The books are $20 each, so Sheila will be here to do that. And Diane will stay and do some signing if you'd like her to sign your book.